All right. Well, today I have the privilege and the pleasure to yarn with my deadly brother, Jeffrey Morgan. So, my brother, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, Mark, thank you for having me. And it's a deadly sort of thing that you've stepped into. And as soon as I seen you post up about it, I was one that would was there to encourage yourself and see the journey you got. I love what you do, and I love the journey yourself. And I think it will be a great success, and the people you get on will really open up to yourself. You've got a great nature as well. So I look forward to seeing further episodes down the track.
Thank you so much. So I'm still very new, and I've got a big long list of people that I want to engage with, and you were definitely on that list. So you've reached out to me, and I'm really happy that you've managed to jump on early on, and I can't wait to engage in our yarn and share the deadly work that you're doing as well. In my little intro to this, I did do an acknowledgement, but before we begin today as well, I just want to acknowledge that I'm on Dharawal country and acknowledge the land on which you're on, and just a big thanks so much for reaching out. So before we jump in, I'm just going to read a little bio. I've been onto your website and it is absolutely amazing. That is such a deadly website. But my deadly brother here with me today, his name is Jeffrey Morgan. He is a mental health and wellbeing consultant, nutritionist, and lifestyle coach. He helps to empower people, to sustainable, enjoyable, for healthy lifestyle habits and rituals. He grew up in Redfern, just like me. I was only down the road at Waterloo, but I spent a lot of time on the block. You probably would have seen me at times, maybe wheeling my old nan to and from those card schools. And Redfern was obviously back then, you're a little bit older than me, bless, but it was a notorious neighborhood, and sometimes, and I went down that path as well, brother, and, getting involved in drugs and heading down a really negative path, but I guess what we did see and what you did see as well was those unhealthy diet, poor mental health, and those bad habits that lead us on a path of self-destruction, I believe. I hear and I've read just on your website, and I'm going to pass over to you in a minute so you can share a little bit about your journey. But I'm really, really sad, that you've obviously lost, your parents, a brother to suicide, and probably a lot of mob as well, just like me, to these preventable diseases, and I believe it starts with I work in education now, but with healthy lifestyles. I'm trying really hard as well to live a healthy lifestyle. I want to grow old. That's my number one goal. So I think I need to pay very special attention to this yarn today and the work that you're doing. And the work that you've been doing has obviously been adopted and, for people right across, our nation and the globe, and it is changing lives and making a difference. So firstly, a very big thank you to the work that you're doing. I think that you're absolutely amazing and so deadly. So I'm just going to pass over to you now, brother, just to tell us a little bit about your story and your journey and how it all started. Was there like a light bulb moment for you, or how did it all come about?
Yeah, so thanks for the introduction. That was amazing. I don't know if I would follow on from that, but you look back on it and you listen to something like that, and I'm proud of who you used to see, and I did used to see you wheeling, your family around, and I think that to yourself is a credit as to the person you are as an individual. And as much as it was a crazy area to grow up in, it's the most tightest knit community and same with a lot of Aboriginal communities, but just people in general could learn from us as communities. We are strong, and as much as there was destruction, we forever, I know yourself and many other people within the network. That's where my passion grew, seeing the health issues within the community. A lot of the girls at the time were on pills. Unfortunately, we lost people over that period of time to not only pills, just drugs in general. And that made me really passionate about seeing, I could see the pain in my uncles, aunties, community's eyes around the struggles of life and what life had brought to the community in general. How could I go about creating change around that? And I figured the first thing I could do was go in and learn a lot about myself as an individual, because I was in and amongst that destruction. Those habits and rituals you spoke about now on a positive level, they were very destructive to myself and to the community and wider community as well. So I just wanted to really get out and learn as much as I could about myself and about health, I suppose. And as I started to learn, when I was a kid, Arnie was around, and he was in movies, and I I think it was just the mentality of having the six pack and walking around at Bondi Beach or wherever it was, that was the kid mentality coming out in myself. And over time, you started to learn, hey, shit, the information that you're learning could really maybe change or save a life here. And I started to pass that on and then became passionate about it, became a trainer, became a nutritionist. And then with all the trauma of growing up within the community, serving over 15 years in custody, I wanted to share all the life lessons. Just did a live video on this, life lessons of crime. And people say, I'm not a criminal, so I can't learn. We are human beings, and whether it's discipline, determination, structure, whatever it may be, whatever value of life is in an individual, we can shift and change from a negative to a positive, no matter how dark and long that's been for, whether it's drug use, whether it's crime, whether it's procrastination, whether it's not believing in yourself because you've been beat up on a physical, emotional, mental level, and changing the hard wiring of that individual and allow them to see a different way to life. Because that was me. I was that individual. I was the young kid who's lost not many role models within the community in the nicest way, until Shane Phillips, as an example, started CDEP, and we were cleaning up or, give us a hand picking this up more. So I'd go and do stuff and I feel great about helping our community. And instead of having the graffiti on the walls, we're starting to paint or pick up the rubbish that was around, the bottles that were cutting, young kids that would run around with no shoes on, right, as a normal. And I think that then started to shift who I was, because I was hardwired a particular way. And I went, wow, there's a different way to life. And how could I transition now from doing it in my own community into the external world? And then I started to relate what I was passionate about, that health and wellbeing journey. And it shifted from being Arnie and being that solid looking deadly fella to going into how could I improve the quality of life of our people so we live longer and stronger with our mob. And that journey evolved into, hey, if this is happening in our community, why isn't it happening to other human beings? Because I was never racist. Even during those times, I was just about supporting humanity and being a good human, or being a human that was loyal to other humans. And I think that's where my alliance, growing up in that area, being a byproduct of the area, my alliance was to those humans. And that's how I see life. We often get caught up in this battle of racism. And I always say the best race on this planet is the human race, when we all get on with one another. I think that's why I shifted and changed and started to really head down the path of a better quality of life for all human beings. And then what's that look like? And for us, we use a couple of principles: being positive, proactive, and productive around what's important to yourself, your perfect life, and you end up the healthiest, happiest, most successful version of yourself. And that improves your quality of life and brings you inner peace. And that's sort of the principles of what we do on a habits and rituals level. And we do that with kids, in schools, in communities, through to juvenile justice jails, corporations, corporates, organisation, health services. We travel around the country and the globe, and we deliver those services through those workshops in half-day, full-day workshops that can be done over a week, one day, structured in a different way. And that's become a huge passion because, as you know, within the community, so many health issues. Suicide on a national level or on a world level, global level, it's at an all-time high, and mental health has gone through the roof. And I think using that experience, funnily enough, to be able to show people, hey, no matter how dark your times are, you can shift and come out of that. That's where the journey will continue to go, and I'm loving it. With Redfern always in the back of my mind as to where we started.
Yeah, no, look, there's so much, you've just come so far, and it's just so amazing. And I think just everything that you're saying now, I kind of like, I'm kind of just going on this journey with you, from those early yarns, you're talking about the pills and those deaths in our communities. I still remember some of them girls where they spend a lot of time at my house you know, with my older sisters. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's so hard. And I think in my book, I've actually written a chapter called Breaking the Cycle. And I guess you're another great example of actually breaking that cycle. And whilst it was a hard community to grow up in, I think I would never change it for anything as well. It's obviously made us the really strong, resilient people. And, you know, just the connections and that love for people and, like you said, humanity. I'm very similar. I work in education, and whilst I'm here to make a difference for our Koori kids or Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander kids, I want to make a difference for all students. You know, I want them all to really have that belief in themselves, to know that they're smart and deadly and can do anything that they set their minds to. So the work that you fellas are doing is just incredible. So you know, I don't know, you must just pinch yourself, you know, that you're actually doing something that you're so passionate about, and you get to make a difference for the lives of others. I think that's amazing.
That's beautiful. And that's a huge tip to anybody out there. We go, whether you went through school or you didn't go through school, we go through this life where we think we have to then get a job and pay our bills, right? And we do have to pay our bills, but my advice to every single person out there is follow your passion. Whatever your passion is, go down that pathway and become the expert in it. And you're not going, that won't happen overnight. And if it does, congrats to yourself, but be committed to that journey. You know, when I started out many, many years ago, there was people that didn't know about me and ended up with a TV show as an example. And coming as a kid who was so destructive, and my parents didn't get to see that, unfortunately, but they only ever saw the destructive nature of myself. And they actually passed on when I was in custody. But the point to it is follow your passion, because at some point in time, you get to a position where your passion will create something that you wake up and love doing every single day. If you follow just making money and paying your bills, you get into a position where your life, you wake up, you perceive it to be a bad day outside, then you hate driving into work, then you hate sitting in the office space. Do yourself a favor, find your passion, follow that every single day, and I promise you, you won't work a day in your life. I wake up every single day committed to changing and saving lives, and I just love what I do. And whether I make, a small amount of money or large, it doesn't matter to me. I'll keep showing up and I'll be happy every single day. And that inner peace I spoke about before, I know what my perfect life looks like, and it's to change and save lives. And similar to yourself, I think that the other thing I wanted to touch on that you spoke about, we often get caught up in, people think, oh, you're in mental health, so you're going to fix the kids that are broken. We're going to fix all kids in any way, shape or form. And we're going to give them the tools, strategies, tips, so that at some point, whether you lose someone in your life, you break up with your partner, you fail within a business in your mindset or version, or fail within anything you perceive within your life, you can then say, hey, I've got some really strong, powerful tools that I can shift and get back out of that position. And it doesn't mean that you won't be impacted by what's impacted your life. It just means that you'll be able to come out of that a little bit stronger, and you won't carry it around in your invisible backpack for a long time. And that's an important lesson for a lot of people. And these things that you're having, as you said, with the kids that non-Indigenous and Aboriginal kids, it also helps cross and understand different our culture, but also bring us more united as a nation. I think, no doubt, you've seen, I've seen, and the nation's seen so much division between both over a period of time.
Absolutely. That division is, and I remember growing up with it. Mum grew up in Walgett, and, the All Mob's from Walgett as well. I know that we also share that connection, but Mum, she used to share with me stories, from growing up. And, from the age of 11, she had to go and work for white fellas out on cattle stations. And she wasn't allowed to go to school because she was Black. She lived over Namai Reserve, and Mum would never want to come down to my school. She would always say, go on, Kylie, you know how to talk to them white fellas. And she'd say these horrible things, And I'm like, Mum, there's some deadly teachers down there, they're not all bad, and really started to try to break down some of those barriers, but she did encourage me to go, and I started to break some of those cycles, being the first in my family to, get a HSC, first to do many and go on to uni and do lots of things. But it's not that that's always the right path as well, but for me that was a big achievement. That's a path that I wanted to take. But the health and the well-being stuff that you spoke about, it's so important. It breaks my heart, when we read those Close the Gap reports. It's actually heartbreaking. And I mean, I feel like, I'm still suffering from a lot of trauma from losing close people to me, to suicide as well, but also from losing both my mums, a sister, my nan, from preventable diseases as well, you know, like mum, you know, also grew up in Walgett, but like many families, you know, moved down to Sydney to be closer to healthcare. And what made me really sad, brother, was the other week I watched this documentary on Four Corners, and it was about this rheumatic heart disease. And a lot of our people out in the communities, young people are dying because of the racism out there and not having access to healthcare and the education around, you know, living a healthy life. And I cried because 35 years ago, I lost my mum. I was only 3 when my birth mum passed away. She had this rheumatic heart disease. And by the time she moved down to Sydney, you know, got linked up with the doctors out at, you know, St. Vincent's and things like that. Like, it was too late. She passed away when I was just 3. And then, you know, my other mum was only 59, you know, when she passed away. And Nan, who I thought was about 100, she said she was only 65, you know. And I mean, I've got a life-threatening heart condition and a few other like autoimmune things, but now my goal is to live long and to support our people as well, to get the education through the programs and the work that, you know, that you're doing, so that we can learn those skills to take control of our lives and live long, healthy, fulfilling lives. So it's
Love that. I think that's powerful. And there's so many layers to that, whether it's how you broke down, we got to, especially as Aboriginal people, the reality is we use a phone and we live in a house, right? And things have changed and evolved, but we can still be connected to culture. But we have to, no one wants to live in an environment that is toxic or stressful to any situation, right? So that's my first conversation with a lot of our mob out there. It's not about saying, hey, we want to be a specific way. You might, as you said, you were the first HCC and then on to uni. That's each to their own. Everyone has their own vision of their own perfect world. But if you're not living it, then you're living within this sadness. And a lot of people, whether you want to choose to be an activist as an example within our community, maybe it's around, bush tucker stuff as an example. We see a lot of people doing that type of thing, even educators or anything that you have that passion for. Follow that path and be that person, and be unforgivingly apologetic to anybody within our mob or anybody in your circle as non-Indigenous people, because in the end, it's your life. And I always say to people, when was the last time they checked up on you, visited you, seen that you were okay? And a lot of the times we try and please so many other people, and we forget about ourselves, the most important person on this planet. And the best thing we can do is what our mob's always done. And this is the same for, just people that watch this podcast later on, the knowledge sharing from your passion of your field. Now, mine's on a health and wellbeing level, same with yourself. Maybe the next person's passionate about plumbing and how you can save money around water as an example. We'd be crazy not to take that on. And we've got to understand that the more we embrace the world for what it is and who you want to be as an individual, without, as an Aboriginal person, losing your culture or connection to culture, then we can live a life of fusion or whatever you want to call that. Because the reality is, as I said, people might jump on and I see this quite a lot within social media, become toxic in the comments around cultural stuff, yet we're on a mobile phone doing that. And we didn't invent the mobile phone, and this is a huge conversation, or especially me as a health and wellbeing consultant / nutritionist. And the recipes I put together, and I've heard when I did the TV show years ago, we cook live, and they were filming live, and I was cooking up a curry, and I used everything totally different to what traditionally I learned from my mother. And the person at the time said, "Oh, this isn't a traditional curry, brother." And I was like, the conversation I want to have with yourself is I'm using everything from the land. Now, what we're using in general, we're adding things that were never here and introduced to us as people. This is for me to be able to connect back to our ancestors. Hey, my dog's in the background trying to eat the tree, so apologies to everyone. Nala?
No, all good. I've had to lock mine. I've got mine locked out 2 doors that way because he'll come and torment me.
She comes and goes, but in general, we do, we have to get into a position where we understand. For me, I went back to what our ancestors did, especially on that health journey. Seeing Arnie, as I said, I also looked at the pictures of our ancestors, and they were the most shredded people. And
Yeah.
it was a no-brainer. I didn't even have to look it up. I said, what did they do? They would have ate from the land. So I went, I'm going to eat as much fresh food as I possibly can. And they moved quite a lot. They probably, as much as they would have sat around quite a lot in a camp area, they would have probably gone out and sort of hunted for food.
Moving around, that's it. A lot of that exercise, and no, you're exactly right. It makes sense. And that's something that I've struggled with, I think in the early years, I was heavily addicted to Yandi. All the drug dealers knew me there, and like a lot of people in our community started dabbling in heroin and going down that path as well. And I know that I was doing it to feed this void and this trauma. When I think back now, obviously I'm an educated woman, and then over the years, my drug of choice has become food. So I'll binge eat and I'll go silly on food, and I still do it. I'm a yo-yo dieter. I go up and down. I will gain 10 kilos, lose it 10 kilos. Like, it's just crazy. And I've made a decision. Like, I'm a 41-year-old woman now. This is just silly. I've got a daughter who's nearly 18. I don't want her to follow in my footsteps and have this unhealthy lifestyle. Luckily, I've got a son. He's nearly 22, but he's into health as well and fitness, and he's not wamba and silly like the way that I go. But this year, I'm like, enough's enough. It has to stop, and I think this yarn today as well is really just inspiring me, and I hope that it will also inspire a lot of others listening, because I'm a big fan of the work of, like people like Brene Brown and lots of these other, I love all the, the motivation stuff. And through a lot of my own trauma over the years, I've looked to these people for inspiration, like I love Oprah, and just hearing from personal stories. And, Brene's got this quote, that I've put in my book as well. It's about, really owning your story and loving yourself through that. So, I've only recently launched my book, and I told people for the first time, about my past and the things that I weren't, not happy about or not proud of. But I know that by sharing that already, it's starting to make a difference for a lot of our young people, or people that don't have a past, that we're proud of. And even just to be in this space today, yarning with you, a very different but also similar journey of having a past that we're not proud of, but actually taking that and focusing on our passion. All I want to do now, and you've mentioned something before as well, just about following your heart, going with your passion. I always say I want to get to the end of my life and in the end of my career, knowing that I've had a go, and not wondering this what if, like what if I would have jumped in and written that book, or really told my story and used all this knowledge that I've learned over the years. Because maybe, and I've learned it from other people, and I've also learned and tapped into my own ancestors and intuition and all the rest of it, but like, it'd be selfish of me if I didn't pass this knowledge on. And I'm just so grateful as well that you're so kind and generous in giving your advice, because, I think a lot of people will listen to this and learn from it. One question that I have for you next, brother, is what are your tips? So, like, for example, I mentioned that I have been a yo-yo dieter. It's going to be my past life now, because that's not happening anymore. Like, if for someone that's just starting out on their health and wellbeing journey, and, the last couple of years in COVID, a lot of people have really struggled, like with the lockdowns, not having access to gyms. I know that really struggled for me, and I'm still not that comfortable getting back into the gym setting, or just starting and then staying focused. Have you got any tips for listeners and myself?
Yeah, definitely.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, people need to understand it's a marathon. So there needs to be patience with it. When you go 100 miles an hour, the enthusiasm's there. That's it. New Year's resolutions are a huge example of this. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to lose 10 kilos by February. And, the motivation's there for that little conversation. I call them conversations of convenience. But if we really slow it down, we'll speed it up. It's a favorite saying of mine. And what that means is we pause for a moment, write out what our perfect life on a health level. And when I say a perfect life, there's different components of life, whether it's on your health, whether it's on your financial, whether it's on what you want out of life, all these different components of life. On a health level, what does it look like for yourself? Do you want to play, at a high level in a particular sport? Then you need to be doing some stuff, training maybe twice a day, different types of stuff. If you're on a journey towards just a better quality of life so that you live longer and stronger with your mob, or just with your people in general, it's important to be patient with the journey, learn things. What gym are you going to go to? Are you going to go to a gym? If not, How can you do something at home? Do you have weights or equipment, I should say, that you're going to utilize at your home? And if you don't, who do you reach out to say, hey, I want to buy some, and what would be your recommendations to buy? Knowing those steps, because people they got the intention, they say, I want to lose weight, and my New Year's resolution is to lose 10 kilos by February, right? But there's no plan or structure. So you're saying, I'm going to open this business, but there's no framework to the business. And it falls over because you hit a roadblock, you hit an obstacle, and it's everything in life, especially as you know, within business or just life in general, will throw curveballs at yourself. And as soon as you have one failure in your perceived mind, then you step away from it. You go, oh, look, I failed. Next year, my advice to yourself is get out of that and start to create habits and rituals that are sustainable, realistic, and enjoyable to yourself, that you can maintain and sustain for the rest of your life to be the best of your life. Because if you don't, you're going to try and get into something, say 10 kilos by February from January 1st, and it's just unrealistic. You're not going to enjoy the journey. You're not going to be learning things. So if you say, hey, I want to lose 10 kilos to meet, I'd say maybe aim for the next 3 months at the start of the year. What gym are you going to join? Have you trained before? Do you know how to use the equipment? Do you know how much is a safe recommended amount of weight to lose per week? All these different components, and that list could go on. How do you eat properly? What are you currently eating? Do you know if you're eating X amount of food, you're not getting enough nutrients? And having those conversations, and it's important to listen and learn. Something my grandmother taught me, that you can grow and prosper from. Because if you're not going to listen and learn, you'll take it and say, I want to lose weight and I'm going to lose 10 kilos by February next year, the year after, and the year after. And if that is you and you've done that, please do yourself a favor, slow it down and speed it up before you go into next year. Don't even worry about a resolution. Create one habit and step into it, even if that's just a little walk around the block. And that would be my biggest tip around, even if it's business and life in general. We get caught up in this thing where we want to start a business and we want to have the website up tomorrow, and it just won't happen, as you know, with your own business. It takes time, and to do a life plan on yourself, that's going to take time, whether that's on a health level, a business level, a life level, relationship, workplace, whatever it may be. That everything's about creating that intentional living, and that means you're just going to have to pause, slow it down to speed it up and actually get something out of it. So don't get too caught up in jumping in and saying, all right, that's it. Because if you break down one of those, you're losing weight, you don't show up for the next 3 days because you just couldn't be bothered. You set in your particular ways. We're all set as human beings with our own habits and rituals, creatures of habit. And if they've been destructive towards you being the best version of yourself, you can't expect that to happen in a week. And, if you have 3 days off, that's cool. Next week, aim for 2 days off, and try and always work towards being a better version of yourself. Never compare yourself to somebody else, because we get caught up going, oh, Jeff, if I said the Yukos, and a lot of people, I say, come and train with me. I'm like, oh, no way, man, I'm not as fit as you. The whole point to that conversation is more about us just getting together and doing something at your own level, my level, and at the same time being in the environment to create the success we want around the knowledge that we could be learning and sharing from. And if someone wanted to be a millionaire, maybe we want to surround ourselves with other millionaires. If we want to learn culture or language, maybe we're surrounding ourselves with elders or loyal people that can teach us that value. And once we understand that, we step away from the ego, and we allow ourselves to be open and listen and learn. And that would be my biggest tip. Be in it for the long haul. Don't get into this short-term gain for long-term pain. And that means that you think, nah, I can do this. I'm going to train twice a day, run 10Ks every single day, eat this much food. It's not sustainable. You won't enjoy that. You'll burn out. You might end up injured. And then that means long-term pain will come because you're injured and you can't train. Then you add your chiro, physio, hospital bills, and it stacks on.
And what it does to your mental health as well, going, oh man, you're back to start.
And then 3 years later, you're back to square one. And people always say to me, oh, you're at this particular level. All I've done is what we call progressive overload, like an aeroplane taking off, you might hear in the background, just a real slow, steady, continuous pace. And in this case, the tortoise does beat the hare. And that would be my biggest advice to yourself.
Amazing.
Always
Honestly, I'm like, I'm so inspired already. I just, I've only recently started back on my little health journey. I went to a boxing class this morning, believe it or not. Just
it.
one of the ladies who I know, she does a little small group session out of her garage actually, but I woke up some muscles that have been sleeping for a long time, but I'm like, it's all right, just keep going, show up, a couple of times a week. And, I love what you're saying as well. You got to rub shoulders with those, that you aspire to be. So I'm probably going to hit you up sometime and come and, I don't know, do a little bit of walking, or I'll slow jog next to you or something anyway.
And that's the biggest thing we do. We in the nicest way, we get intimidated. Say it was me, right? And here I'll give the example myself. We got to step out of our ego. As a young kid in a destructive pathway, especially around culture as an proud Aboriginal man in Redfern, that everyone knew that Redfern was the Aboriginal community within New South Wales to be at. As an example, it was very notorious and whatever else. So in my head, I was a proud Aboriginal man, but I didn't know my culture, my songlines, my totem, up home, my family, who was my family, all these different components. So I had to drop the ego and say, hey, Aunt, can you teach me language? What's my totem? What's my Dreamtime stories here? Tell me about the eagle and all these different things. Because if I didn't, I'm intimidated, and the intimidation comes from my ego being too proud. And I'm not going to ask that because I'm going to look stupid. We don't look stupid. The reality is we grew up a particular way and we've formed these habits and rituals as an individual based around who taught us those. And if they were destructive or we didn't learn for whatever reason, just own that. And that's a huge lesson in itself, accountability and responsibility to who you are, but who you want to be. And just be proud and say, I don't know language. Can you teach me? And be open to that. And to this day, I continue to learn from my uncles and those of value to myself who know our language and do my best around it. And that's all I can do, show up and be a better version of myself every single day. And don't worry about judgment from other people. Worry about the awareness that you have within yourself around your own inner peace. And people will always say things no matter who you are within your life and how positive you may be. But that's not our business to worry about.
Right. Yeah, no, it resonates. What you're saying resonates so deeply with me. I grew up within my Black family, and spent all my life living in Redfern. And the only time that we'd go out of Redfern is going back to Walgett. And so everyone would think, well, you grew up within your Aboriginal community and family. You must know everything about history and culture and all that sort of stuff. But honestly, like I was probably 15 was, a really destructive time for me. I was only going to school a couple of times a week, but really nearly leaving school. And, this is when I was really bad into drugs and things like that. But from what I learned from studying Aboriginal studies, if I didn't go and study Aboriginal studies in year 11 and year 12, I wouldn't have known about all the things like, the assimilation policies, all that trauma that's been inflicted upon our people. It really made sense with, I could understand my mum's trauma. I could understand Nan's trauma and all that sort of stuff. And like language, it makes me really sad. And, like one of my cousins, had a lot to do with, like the Gamilaraay language book as well. And he's like, keeps saying to me, cuz, when you come out here, I'm going to teach you language. And every time I try to engage with it, I say a few words here and there, but to me, it's like, I always use the Aboriginal English and the language that I grew up with, that came natural to mum and to Nan. And the thought, and even when I've attempted to engage with language now, I've got every opportunity to do it. It actually makes me really sad. It brings up a lot of sadness. Like I want to cry, because it's like, because our people would, that was taken away. And now I've got to go and learn this other way. Do you know what I mean? Like whether it's through, these other fellows, I don't know. It's just, I always say that, because I work in a lot of schools now and they want to get all these language programs in, and just to be mindful that sort of stuff is a really sensitive issue as well, for a lot of our people. Don't just think, oh yeah, we've got the language, now let's go and roll it out. And also don't even think that every child in that school, it's appropriate. And I don't know, I just think it's there's still a lot of healing to happen, you know, with our mob as well. And there's a lot of research
Absolutely.
which you probably know about, you know, like they reckon it takes about 6 generations to kind of wipe out this trauma, even if we weren't directly affected. So I'm still got the sadness of mum stories and nan stories, you know, and like I'm 3rd generation. My kids have also heard those stories. And,
Yeah.
you know, like we've still just got a lot of healing to do. And I believe, you know, like the work that you're doing as well is just going to help, you know, if we can be healthy. And we just want choice, you know. Education it gives us freedom and choice. And when I say education, I don't just mean academic education. I mean education around nutrition and life and choices and everything that you're doing as well, brother. So a very big thank you. I think, you know, I'm really emotional just hearing all the stuff that you're talking about today as well. But look, I really want everyone to hear about your deadly business. So I've been on your website today, and your website's amazing. It just takes you all down all these different rabbit holes in regards to the things that you can offer. So to all the listeners out there, like, what can you do? I know that you're a speaker, you do these PT things, but I mean, just a little bit of a brief overview. And you know, how can they contact you? Is it, you know, is it through your website?
Yeah, so it's Jeffrey Morgan, JERREY, morgan.com.au. And in general, as you said, we're more around the mental health and wellbeing side of things as a consultant. We consult with Ministry of Health, New South Wales, ACT Health, hospitals, universities. So we really do a lot around national framework or just health in general. Right, same thing. A lot of this, you hit something very important. This is for everybody out there. Life experience is valuable, and the data that you collect as an individual from people by having conversations, that is pretty much how they collect data anyway. So that is priceless, and that knowledge sharing as Aboriginal people, for those that are watching this, both non-Aboriginal and Aboriginal people down the track, is so important to be able to take on and help you grow and prosper as an individual. But what we do is habits and rituals workshops. So 85 different modules. You structure those modules however you want. And we've got, as I said before, everything from leadership to unpacking trauma, dealing with stress, accountability, habits and rituals, all these components of life and every, you know, discipline, whatever it may be. And whether it's in a corporate workspace, a school, a young kid getting in trouble at risk with the police as an example, those that have been in custody for a long period of time, those that have been through drug addiction or any form of addiction for that sake, through to Aboriginal communities, which is the main, you know, that was the main focus we got into this. Probably the biggest thing, anyone that watches this down the track, if you are in a community and I know it, you know it, because everyone knows it within our community, there's so many health issues and people are dying way too young. And one of the biggest mottos I've got is longer and stronger with your mob. And when I say that, I mean that so deeply. People, I am committed to changing and saving lives. Like literally, I wake up every single day. But the saddest thing, and I want to reach out to anyone that watches this, whether it's Kylie, whether it's myself, make sure you're engaging with people. And this ain't a beat up, but people that are passionate and live by what they teach, because I want to live and learn culture and language from my uncle who's living it every day. I want to live and learn from a health and wellbeing perspective from people that are passionate about it, have learned stuff through personal experience, but then on the back end have the education behind it. So they're really strong and then have that passion behind changing and saving lives through the knowledge sharing that we as Aboriginal people, you know, so much value. And I think if you're out there as a health organisation, service, whatever it may be, even a community, Kempsey, we just did some great work with Kempsey and they got 30 different organisations on board and brought us up there as an example. So don't get caught up thinking, oh, we can't do this, or, you know, it's not within our scope. What we do, as much as it's a mental health and wellbeing aspect, there's so many components just of life, and I could sit there and talk to you about discipline for days on end, you know, and that I could do a year's worth of workshop around discipline and talk about different things throughout that consistently. So we're not here to step on anybody's toes, but we're passionate about changing people's lives to be better, to improve the quality of life. And the quality of life is inner peace, the independence for yourself, to be able to do anything and everything you want to do at the point in time you want to do it. And when we understand that, we're in a really sound position. But at the moment, there's a huge disconnect, to be straight out and honest, between us as a service and services within the community that are known and being able to provide financially to help smaller businesses, whether it's yourself, myself, Kyles, anybody else out there doing great things with a passion behind it. And we're not getting enough work. Most of my work, I survive off corporates, to be straight out and honest. And I started this to change and save the lives of Aboriginal people. Now, those that are watching this, don't take that the wrong way. I understand where I grew up and why the passion grew. And brother-sister suicide, preventable issue from another brother who passed away, and both parents from cancer, plus the health issues within your community. And that was so normal within the Aboriginal community. So that's where my passion grew. And I really want to have a huge impact on our community so that we live longer and stronger. You buried uncles, aunties, family that should still be here because of lifestyle choices or knowledge. And if I can do that, not only to mob, we do more non-Indigenous people than we do our community. So if you watch this and you're out in a community, reach out. You have the power to get us into your community by saying, hey, reach out to jeffreymorgan.com.au, hit the contact form up. We travel anywhere in the country. We're about to do National Social and Emotional Indigenous Wellbeing Conference, where I'll be a host up in NT. Then we might be in South Australia doing a prisons program. So please don't think because you're somewhere else within this country, whether you're Aboriginal or non-Aboriginal, reach out, have that conversation. But especially our communities, please. I can't beg you enough. And I don't beg for business. I beg to change and save lives.
Absolutely.
Because he's someone who's got the knowledge, and in the nicest way, we ignore it. It's insane. If we could look after the land, and we had people who are powerful around. Rhonda Ashby, as an example, who has great knowledge around the trees, what edible plants, things we can get out of for ourselves to survive as a culture for many, many years. Yet we ignore that. We're going down a path of whether it's mental health, suicide. And when I say we're going down a path of destruction towards something that we have someone in that area to create a fix. And I reach out, and if you do watch this video, have the conversations with us. Jeffrey Morgan, jeffrey.com.au, because I'd love to be in our communities more often than not.
Yeah.
The reality is we're probably in a community once a week, and we in corporates 9 other times outside of that. If we could flip that, my passion started.
Yeah.
On a health and wellbeing level around our
very,
community.
very similar. I mean, I'm grateful now, I work in education. I work with a lot of our teachers, but I guess a past life and a past job as well, and one that I loved so much was running workshops, working with our kids. I developed this Dream Big program. It's still a dream of mine to get it back in there. In that program, it's all around, resilience and goal setting and all that sort of stuff. So I would love to, like you said, you've really inspired me through this year. And I don't want to get to the end of my life and my career going, oh, imagine all the lives you could have changed and all the students that you could have made a difference for if you would have, allowed yourself and showed up for your dreams and goals. And, I know that when I go in, and I love my job, when I leave these schools and these sessions, I leave with a little bit extra sort of bounce in my step, because you feel like, and I think it's just they love learning from true, authentic, genuine stories, and I always, and I touch on it in my book as well, and I always say it, I'm a big footy fan. I love footy and all these deadly fellas and, the musicians and all that sort of stuff. But like growing up, I didn't know of a lot of other Aboriginal role models in the community. And I didn't even know that there were black fellas working at organisations like Aboriginal Affairs and things like that until my school had organised for me to do work experience. And then I walked in, it was a light bulb moment for me going, oh my God, there's all these deadly black fellas in here dressed up in deadly clothes working at Aboriginal Affairs. And then I had this, it opened up my mind because that's what I wanted to do. So I think listening to this yarn today, brother, I mean, the whole point of me trying to find my courage, and I'm still working on it. I'm still a bit shamed. So I think I'll definitely keep on looking up to you for inspiration. But I want our young people in schools to hear about the role models like you. You're there to change lives. But I just think, there could be a lot of young fellas out there that want to do something that you're doing. We don't all have to be the teachers and the lawyers and the doctors and all the rest of it. Maybe I think that, that you're just going to change so many lives. So a big thank you for coming on and yarning today. You know, I have really enjoyed it, and I just think that there's so much that we can continue to yarn about, and I look forward to yarning in the future as well, you know, and I think there'll be a lot of other topics that I reckon we could sit and yarn for days.
Easy money. And I think, you know, a couple of things. I wish you all the best with the podcast, and be, for everybody out there, be Kyle's, like, just jump into it and tackle that fear. And we had a little bit of a snippet of a conversation before, and she goes, oh, you know, I'm just new to this. That's all it's about, just stepping in, and you can only learn and grow from every experience and situation within your life, even if it was a destructive or negative one. So the Life of Crime helped me create my program that helped me travel around the globe and around our country to deliver that. Think about that, and how destruction created happiness within my life and change in other people's lives. And as Kyle said, just follow your passion. You might be a plumber and then put on 20 different plumbers, and you know, fixing all the pipes around Sydney or wherever it may be in your world, and that might be your world. But if you're not doing that, and that's your passion, you're letting yourself down. And you get this one life, 1 in 47 trillion chance to be on this planet. Make the most of it based around what your perfect life looks like, and tap into that every single day, and be intentional when your feet land out of bed every single morning. Know what path you're taking and direction, and tackle every single fear. You've heard her talk about a boxing session, and she's put herself out. Now I'm going to challenge you to get together, even if it's a Bondi to Coogee type walk or something, have a yarn on it. And I have no doubt the yarn between yourself and I will go down the path of the health of our community and how we can sort of help others get the most out of their life on that level. But thanks for having me.
I love
what
it.
I've shared today, the knowledge will help somebody out there. And if it does, once this does drop, leave a comment below. If you are going through a hard time, drop it into the website or even through Kyle's, and I'm happy to have a conversation. If you want us out into community, we've shared that, jeffreymorgan.com.au. Leave a message on the contact form, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
Thank you. And if anyone's listening to this, you know, and if it's not you, you know, hopefully you've got something out of our conversation today. Otherwise, share it with somebody else. If you feel like there's a community or school or person that would benefit from hearing this yarn, please go and share it. We're here to build each other up and not to tear each other down. And there's enough good in this world to go around. And I really believe in that. You know, there's nothing more that I love than to celebrate the success of others, you know, and I'm always everybody's biggest cheerleader, you know, so I'm here cheering you on in the work that you're doing, brother, and forever grateful for what you're doing. And I wish you all the success with your business and your life-changing stuff. You know, it's it's very similar to the work that I'm doing. So I'm glad that, you know, and I've bumped into you over the years. I've seen you up at Walgett in funerals, at Yarman, everywhere. But, you know, we had a few little yarns, but I'm really grateful that we finally got the opportunity to sit and to have this virtual yarn, and definitely keen for that walk, because it's all a new journey for me. And I'm still new on my health and wellbeing journey, the consistent journey, I mean. And we'll definitely do that walk. That sounds deadly, actually. I'll hit you up and we'll catch up for that one. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening, everyone. I'm just going to stop the recording now. Have a deadly day wherever you're listening in or watching this from, and we'll yarn again soon.
Stay deadly.